What are the downsides of weed that people don't talk about? Been smoking every day for the past decade and am recently realizing that being too introspective can be a negative thing at times. I've been thinking too much and acting too little. Very true. Not having an appetite if you're not high. You have to smoke heavily though to get to that point. Real talk here. When I started smoking I gained 10 pounds. When I kept smoking I lost 40. It can become your only personality trait. I lost a significant chunk of my best friends in college because by senior year all they were focused on was weed. Since I didn't smoke we suddenly had nothing in common despite being close friends and classmates for years. Every conversation at every hour of the day inevitably turned into reminiscing about the last time they got high, or planning out the next time they'd get together to smoke. Eventually I just stopped trying to keep in touch with them from day to day and we never really stayed as close since then. This is how I feel a lot of the time because I don't drink. It seems like 95% of all social interaction involves alcohol. Weed is for people that have found their way in life. It's not for people who are looking for the way, my uncle. In other words, as fun as it may seem when you're young, get your together first education, family, career, etc. Edit. Thanks for the gilding, kind strangers. And for those of you who have taken offense, relax. I'm glad it all worked out for you, or my sympathies if it didn't. Regardless, weed can for most people take your motivation and drive away if it's taken up and consumed in high volumes at an early age. It's just think it isn't a good idea. I think if you're ripping bongs every day from 16 up through high school. This is really true. I smoke weed but I have a successful life. My brother isn't very successful and also smokes. Guess which one of our weed habits my parents complain about? Yours, undoubtedly. My sympathies. Frequent heavy use can affect your motivation and mood, even during periods of not being high. It is habit-forming. Not technically addictive, but for some it can be habit-forming in maladaptive ways. Bad for your lungs if you inhale combusted flower. One thing that I never see brought up is the effect of marijuana on dreaming. Marijuana use can prevent the user from dreaming during regular sleep. When the user stops using marijuana for a while, they can experience night after night of extremely vivid dreams. I can only speak for my own experience, but I have heard this echoed by a co-worker's dad who started smoking again because he couldn't handle having acid trip dreams every night. I suspect that marijuana has some potent effect on REM sleep that will remain underdocumented until it is descheduled and more thorough research can be done. Definitely true. Smoked every night for a couple years. Never dreamed until I stopped. I find that taking tea breaks consistently helps with this problem, but unfortunately weed is somewhat addictive to a lot of people. I always really enjoy those vivid dreams though. Great time to try lucid dreaming. It seems like most of my response has already been said, but I want to reiterate 3 major observations what I've noticed from my own semi-frequently weed consumption. Demotivation. The impact from weed on motivation levels I find is in 2 parts. The first part is when you initially consume the weed. Most people fall into a habit of eating food and watching something on TV. The second part one found is the next morning. I experience a type of weed hangover. The following morning, I feel more groggy and more susceptible to just loading around the following day. Anxiety. Things that aren't currently stressing you out may start to induce anxiety in you. While this isn't always the case, weed has the potential to worsen your mental state if you aren't careful. This impact became more pronounced when I smoked weed solo. Having other people around allowed me to be more present in the moment, whereas I was in my head when I was alone. Food consumption. I found for me that continued weed use led to some unhealthy eating habits. The munchies are real and for often that not you are craving food that is not considered healthy. If this becomes a more common occurrence then your overall diet can go south quickly. Anxiety is the biggest part for me. Never had a problem in high school or early college, but I had a huge panic attack, but the next 2 times I smoked just made me have huge anxiety. Don't do it anymore. Don't feel like I'm in control of my thoughts while on it. I relate very strongly to your comment. I used to love weed and regularly smoked alone, but after a non-weed related panic attack, smoking really triggers the anxiety. It's so bad I don't even think about smoking anymore. With friends I might have one small toke, but absolutely no more, and these instances are few and far between. It made me feel so incredibly bad I don't even miss weed. I would say that as a long-term smoker that once out, it has made me incredibly boring. If I have evening plans on the weekend but smoke anything in the day, then I'm far more prone to cancelling those nighttime plans. If I do attend those plans after smoking in the day, then I feel I'm not entirely there. Awkward silences, jokes don't land, keeping a conversation going becomes 10x harder, and I'm inevitably just waiting for an appropriate time to leave. Overall, it just kinda makes you socially awkward and super boring to be around in a social setting. Just from my experience, I remember one party I was at, sitting in a corner, and the whole night felt like one of those scenes in movies when the guy stands there and everything behind is blurry and in fast motion. People would come and sit next to me, have whole conversations that I would listen to, and then go, but could not interact at all. Weird. I was trying to drink less at the time and as a result smoked way more. It was not working. Same. Went to a house, drank a few beers and had like 3 edibles. I was locked to the couch, but mentally I felt like I was hovering above the room observing everything. People would come by to talk, and I loved talking with people, but I couldn't keep up at all. Someone would ask me about my favorite band and apparently I'd answer like 5 minutes later. Then again they were drunk, and it's kind of obnoxious being around drunk people when you're high. I've noticed after the initial uptick in chatter, people tend to get really quiet and zoned out in their own thoughts. When I used to smoke it, I found it had a dulling effect on my personality and conversational skills after the fact, too. I remember in high school, there was a girl in our group of friends who always wanted to smoke weed with us, and we never knew why, because when she got high she wouldn't say a word anymore, would be paranoid, and would just have this blank expression on her face. An amp #X200B. It was unsettling AF because this girl was loud as and was hands down the funniest one of our group. She was like an entirely different person when stoned. I get much quieter when high like your friend. No paranoia though. I'm also usually firing on all cylinders, upbeat and relatively funny. Well, I'd at least like to think it. For me, slowing down and being quieter gives my brain a chance to rest and dumb down a bit. My thoughts chain together a lot less logically, but it's nice to think less sometimes. That's just my 2 cents. After about 10 years of use, my body has developed an allergy that I have never heard anyone else get. When I use THC, my sinus gets inflamed, nearly blocking the airway, forcing me to breathe through my mouth, making falling asleep very difficult. Also, the next morning the boogers I get are relentless. It is like all the stuff is coming back out my sinus. This almost always ends up with minor bleeding nose. I'm mildly allergic to the smoke, weed itself as well. Being in a room with smokers is like being around trees throwing off all their pollen during allergy season. Smoking it is like inhaling that pollen, and people want me to smell their weed, which gives me the same result. It is more common than you think, for whatever that's worth. Especially with medicinal and recreational use being legalized, more folks are noticing it. There's not going to be enough Benadryl in the world to get me through EEL this coming year. Motivation in heavy consumers. It is fine in moderation, but multiple times per day seems to suck the ambition from most people I've seen, including myself long ago. South Park said it best, well, son, pop makes you feel fine with being bored, and it's when you're bored that you should be learning some new skill or discovering some new science or being creative. If you smoke pot, you may grow up to find out that you aren't good at anything. I feel like this quote could also be applied to mindlessly scrolling through social media or playing Candy Crush-like games. We drown out all the white space with this stuff and sucks away the time we would have to learn something interesting or be creative. I smoked every day for about 10 years, minus about 6 months in all, that is I needed to be clean for a drug test for a job. Weed starts off amazing and fun, but after becoming a habitual smoker it turns turns into a crux that's hard to shake. It's not that it's super addicting, it's just nothing is as fun as being high, so you want to be high all the time. It dulls feelings but highlights feelings of existentialism, which can sometimes be overbearing. I would also feel stuck in my life a lot, like it would be hard to make changes, but I would want better things for myself, but it always seemed impossible to achieve. I did have problems with breathing, but I have a history of asthma and took up Tai Chi to compensate, which I found really enjoyable, and it helped me to slow down greatly on smoking. The one most annoying thing with being a smoker is your tolerance level goes way up, so even though you are smoking you aren't getting that high you used to get. Just a mind-numbing insomnia almost. I also had a loss of appetite over time and ate less. It also made me feel comfortable with where I was in life, and I had a lack of motivation. Though some days, like once a month or two, it could really motivate you to do something, but that would wither away quickly. Overall, I would recommend it only at parties or every once in a while, but I have quit a while ago, and never want to go back to being a daily smoker. Also, me being an expectant mother now has changed my feelings towards it. I don't want my kids growing up around it or around me being high. I feel they should find that on their own if they want, and I shouldn't influence them to think it's okay. Edit. Wow, a lot of comments on this, which is surprising for me. I will try to answer you all over time. Thank you everyone for the gold and silver and such. I just want to say I did mean crux instead of crutch. Like I said, weed highlighted thoughts and feelings of existentialism in my life, so I felt like a martyr almost on my quest to find answers to these questions of mine. I felt like I was crucifying myself for a righteous cause to know what I wanted to know. Also, a lot of people saying I described addiction when I stated weed wasn't addicting. I always thought if something was addicting you couldn't quit cold turkey due to your body going into shock or death, or that you couldn't quit without help like methadone for heroin addicts or something. Since I quit weed cold turkey and when I wanted to, I didn't think it was addicting. Like I choose to eat eggs every day for breakfast, it's not addicting, but I like it and choose it. But maybe I am addicted. Lol, just stating. Also, I did psychedelics for a period of time throughout all this, so maybe this changed how weed affected me over time. I had a lot of bad trips and can't even think about tripping again. God bless all of you guys though. I know weed affects people differently, I just wanted to share how it affected me over time. I don't think it should be illegal though, and I think people should be free to use it as they see fit. I believe everyone has the personal liberty to choose their own path. Edit 2. Anyone looking for advice on how to stop, I recommend changing your routine. My husband and I took up different activities like taking the dogs to the dog park, going to hockey games, spending more time with family, going to the beach, Tai Chi, etc. We are both homebodies, but we decided to go out and be more active, and it helped to break the routine of sitting at home smoking. Find new stuff to do instead.